So anyway, I just got on CNN probably an hour or so ago, and I saw this article about comedian Kevin Meaney. He died on October 21st, and I saw this picture. He looks pretty fat. I've never really heard of the guy, but I just made a few videos just a couple months ago, back in August, about the death of fat comedians. I talked about Ralphie May and how he's connected to the death of Sam Kinison. And, I think that he still might die this year. He's very, very connected to the baseball season. He's connected to the NBA of next year with his birthday of 217. There's a whole bunch of 217 that I've been seeing recently. Michael Jordan was born on 217. The NBA All-Star Week, they decided to move it out of North Carolina, the team that Michael Jordan owns. They're moving it to New Orleans now. But they told us on July 21st, 21/7, and the NBA All-Star Week begins this year on February 17th, Michael Jordan's birthday. There's all kinds of stuff going on with this. I even just made a post that maybe I'll make the video tonight or possibly tomorrow. But I've talked all about Valentine's and how it's connected to Bill Murray. And Bill Murray just went to the White House briefing and said the Cubs were going to win. It's a really long post, but moral of the story, it's super connected to Valentine's Day and Lupercalia. And the Pope he eliminated Valentine's Day and he created he eliminated Lupercalia and he created Valentine's Day was this guy, Pope Gelasius. He just so happened to be 217 popes before Pope Francis. His name equals 145, just like Chicago, Illinois. There's a whole lot more to it. And, it's the 48th day of the year. The Indians haven't won the World Series since 1948. But to put it in perspective, last night I was taking screenshots of every time they put up a new headline on ESPN in baseball, and they kept putting these videos with the Cubs up, 2 minutes, 17 seconds. Then they put another one up later on, 2 minutes, 17 seconds. Then they put a different one up, 2 minutes, 17 seconds. There's something very significant about it. I'm not exactly sure, but the moral of the story in this video is I talked about fat comedians and how they are super connected to the number 124 and the number 61. I have a whole bunch of examples. I noticed it because of the death of the Big Lebowski, and there's a big Ralph theme in regards to the year 1991, and I thought of Ralphie May. But anyway, in the movie, the Big Lebowski, he signs the check at Ralph's. That's the big joke. They always go to Ralph's to shop or whatever. He signs the check on September 11th of 1991. That movie also has John Goodman in it. John Goodman was in the movie King Ralph. I will leave some links in the description. There's a whole lot of information to recover, and I don't want to go back over it. But just know that there is a Ralph theme. That's why I was following Ralphie May. And then a few nights later, the movie Uncle Buck was on TV, and I decided to watch it, and I thought, I've never looked into the death of John Candy. I'm sure it's coded just like the rest. And I discovered a whole bunch of 124 around fat comedian deaths. So John Candy, he dies 124 days after his birthday. Sam Kinison also died 124 days after his birthday. If you write out Sam Kinison in gematria, he equals 124. Ralphie May's birthday was 1 month, 24 days before Sam Kinison died. And Ralphie May, the reason that he even knows Sam Kinison, or Sam Kinison brought Ralphie May to Houston to further his comedy career. Houston equals 112. We're going into the 112th World Series this year. The Super Bowl this year is going to be held in Houston. And both of these guys have ties to baseball. Ralphie May equals 54 and also 108 in gematria. If you write out 54, it equals baseball. Baseball equals 54. The Cubs haven't won in 108 seasons. You know, all kinds of stuff. I even talked about the curse of Rocky Colavito, and that guy was born on August 10th, which can be written as 10/8. Interesting that I would make this post on that same day. You know, had no idea. It just randomly happened like that. But Sam Kinison, if you read out his name, Samuel Kinison equals 54, just like baseball, and also 162. If you read out Major League Baseball, it equals 162. They also play 162 regular season games. I'm pretty sure that this guy just died because I'm supposed to see this story. That might sound strange to people who have no idea what I'm talking about, but I just literally made these videos and these posts on this, talking about fat comedians, and, you know, all I have been covering recently is baseball, and then this guy dies, and the stuff that I was talking about with Ralphie Bay and Sam Kinison was that they were connected to baseball. Anyway, we'll get to it in a second, but look at this guy, right? The reason I'm just recapping, this guy's name equals 61 and 124 in gematria. He's a fat comedian. It fits exactly with what I'm talking about. But let's keep moving on. I want to show a few more things. You know, Chris Farley was also connected to Chicago. He died in Chicago. John Belushi was born in Chicago. And look, he died his birthday, January 24th. If you write out John Belushi equals 61 and 142, which is, you know, you could rearrange it to 124. Chris Farley equals 124, 61. So moral of the story, you know, they all have super connections to the number 124. Then we just get this fat comedian who dies, and his name equals 124. I think it's kind of funny, the original video that I put out about the fat comedians dying with the number 124, I put it out on August 19th, and if you go from August 19th to the day that this guy dies, a span of 63 days, and, you know, if you read his name out in gematria, just his last name, Meaney, it equals 63. I don't find that a coincidence. Also, in regards to 2 months, 2 days, I talked about this a whole bunch in regards to the death of Sam Kinison and how he was connected to the NBA Finals. So, Sam Kinison's birthday was 2 months, 2 days before the NBA All-Star Week in 1992. And then he died 2 months, 2 days before the NBA Finals began that year. Basketball equals 22. And the interesting thing about it all is that the basketball season has been super interrelated in the connections to the World Series and the baseball season. Anyway, I hope this is making sense. If you watch my previous videos, you will totally understand what I'm talking about. It might take a little bit of time, but the odds of this fat guy dying with 124 gematria, just, it shouldn't be unbelievable as much as I've shown this stuff, but it blows me away. The CNN article even mentions how he starred in Uncle Buck, right? And that it's the TV series based off of the movie. And the whole reason I even started looking into the fat comedian stuff with John Candy, and I realized all of them were connected to 124, was because the movie Uncle Buck was on, and I decided to watch it, and I thought, alright, let's look up some Uncle Buck. We'll see why John Candy died. You know, I'm sure his death was coded by the numbers, just like all the other fat comedians, just like every other celebrity. And doesn't it seem a little bit weird that we just got this Uncle Buck that just came out? The Uncle Buck they replaced him with the black guy, you know? And they've done this a whole bunch of times in regards to all kinds of movies that I've talked about. When I was talking about Valentine's Day, I talked a lot about the movie Can't Buy Me Love with Patrick Dempsey. And remember, they remade that movie, and they called it Love Don't Cost a Thing, and then they had Nick Cannon star in it. In the post about Bill Murray, I even talk about how it's connected to Little Orphan Annie. Because Bill Murray, he made a tweet in 2015 on January 9th, and on that tweet he wrote, "I can wait 67 years to do something, and I'll still do it the day before." And Bill Murray was only 64 years old at the time. It didn't make that much sense that that would be a tweet, but he did it on January 9th. You know, the 19th prime is 67, and he said 67 years. It could also be written 9/1, Chicago Cubs equals 91. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with it, but it goes back to Little Orphan Annie, and I thought of Little Orphan Annie because of the famous song Tomorrow, Tomorrow It's Only a Day Away. And Bill Murray says he'll wait until the day before. There's a whole bunch of connections to it, but you know what? Then they made a movie about it. They remade the Black Annie movie. I mean, it's just crazy. In the movie Uncle Buck, they moved from Indianapolis to Chicago, and that's why the one high school girl's all mad and blah, blah, blah. And then the grandpa has a heart attack in Indianapolis, and that's why the parents leave, and that's why John Candy or Uncle Buck has to move in and take care of them. But it's just interesting that it's set in Chicago. This guy, Kevin Meaney, he dies 181 days after his birthday, which also today was also Back to the Future Day in 2015, so just interesting. Remember the Cubs got knocked out of the playoffs last year? They got swept on Back to the Future Day last year. Absolutely ridiculously obvious. But 181 days, Los Angeles Dodgers equals 181. Even in the CNN article, they talk about how Meaney was supposed to play a show in Rhode Island today on Saturday, 10/22. If you read out Rhode Island, it equals 55 and 109. Los Angeles equals 55 and 109. And the Cubs play the Dodgers again tonight, and I think the Cubs are going to win tonight. His birthday was also 4/23 of 1956, and that was a leap year, so it was the 114th day of the year. I've been talking about 114 with the Chicago Cubs and how it's connected to the Hoboken train wreck where Chris Christie said there was 114 people injured. The Chicago Cubs also tied the Pittsburgh Pirates on that day. Tie in Gematria equals 114. If the Cubs win the World Series, they'll have 114 wins on the season. I couldn't find the episode. I couldn't find it anywhere online. But on this TV show Uncle Buck that this Meaney guy starred in, the 4th episode is called Cub Fever. And supposedly he wins some type of contest and he gets to provide commentary in the 9th inning of the Cubs game with Harry Carey. And I'm sure there's a big clue into that. If you could actually watch the video, I just can't find it anywhere. But the episode came out on 10/1 of 1990. You know, a lot like 101. The day that the Cubs tied, they had 101 wins that day. Also 10/1 is the day that leaves 91 days in the year. Chicago Cubs equals 91. Chicago, Illinois equals 91. With the S exception. The date numerology this episode even came out was on, it's 101, and it came out on 10/1. In the film, you know, that stars John Candy died in the year 1994, which is a big year that I've been talking about in regards to the White Sox and how it connects to Michael Jordan and the Cleveland Indians. You know, I'll leave some links in the description. I'm telling you, all of this super interrelated. It's all happening for a reason. John Candy is even the announcer for the Cubs in the movie Rookie of the Year. I just made a video in regards to Daniel Stern remaking his character in that movie. And, you know, it's connected to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Pittsburgh Pirates are connected to the Indians and the Cubs. And, you know, I'm still on the fence of what I think. I've thought Cubs forever. I think the Indians could win, though. And I don't mean to include everything about sports all the time. It's just that they code all of these events to sports, or they code sporting events to all of these other events. And they give you clues constantly in the media of what they are doing. That's why they killed this guy. Have a good one.